Hello, everybody. Do I have the right angle? Okay, let's talk about the full moon lunar eclipse in Capricorn that is going to happen tomorrow, July the 16th at 2:38 p.m. Pacific time. 2:38 p.m. Pacific time. If you have not been feeling this full moon lunar eclipse in Capricorn over the past 24, 48 hours, even 72 hours, but certainly 24, 48 hours, I expect you will continue to feel it today, tomorrow, and even for about 24 to 48 hours after the eclipse. If you have not been feeling it, either in a sense of things being revealed, becoming clearer, and in greater intensity in emotion, things being completed, you are made of very stern stuff indeed, or you are just in denial. Take that with a grain of salt. It's meant with a sense of humor. Let me cover first and foremost, let me cover the basics and fundamentals related to full moons and full moon lunar eclipses in 20 seconds. I've already mentioned them. It increase in intensification activity over the past week, but especially the last 24 to 48 hours will continue for another 24 hours, maybe another 48 to 72 hours after the full moon. Some people will feel a full moon. Most people feel it 24 to 48 hours leading up to the full moon. Some people may feel it within 24 hours of the full moon. Okay. All the things I mentioned in terms of either something being completed, offers coming through, you being pushed into the limelight perhaps, although I see some of that, but not quite as much with this particular full moon because of its eclipsy nature, which I will talk about more in a second once I'm done with these fundamentals. Meltdowns, emotional completions, catharsis, the emotional dam breaking, it's important things being revealed, greater intensity, temper tantrums, and as I said, things being completed and reaching culmination, greater busyness, greater energy, greater dynamism. Okay, let's talk about the eclipse. This is the lunar eclipse in Capricorn. We just finished our first eclipse cycle in Capricorn. There's going to be a second eclipse cycle in Capricorn that will begin in December, close to Christmas, I believe, or maybe on Christmas Day, for all I remember. I need to go back and take a look at that. So that would be the next solar eclipse in Capricorn, and then that's later this year. So the first cycle that we're just closing out started on January the 5th of this year, 2019, and is closing out tomorrow on July the 16th. January the 5th, we had a solar eclipse. July the 16th, we have a lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse was a new moon. It started a cycle. The lunar eclipse is a full moon. Something is coming to culmination. And yeah, that is a 6-month period or so coming to some sort of completion. So I would advise you to look back to January the 5th and see what the arc since that time has been. Two other dates that are important, and I mentioned this tons of times before, would be March the 5th and May the 16th of this year. So January 5th, March the 5th, May the 16th, July the 16th, with the eclipses actually happening on January the 5th and July the 16th. These are eclipses of releasing things that were, have been, are our strength, or they're things that we are attached to, but in fact we have outgrown and need to release in order to move forward. Releasing things that we are either attached to or consider a strength or are very much part of our identity is difficult and complicated, and we resist it, which makes the eclipses of release particularly challenging. Wherever the south node is or the eclipses of releases are happening, often the releasing is fought. But not only is it inevitable, the hard pill to swallow is that without actually releasing what needs to be released, you may not actually be able to move forward and meet your potential or continue with the adventure that awaits. At the same time, you have the planet Saturn very close to the south node, and you have the planet Pluto. Some of this transformation is inevitable. and indeed has a kind of a death and transformation quality. Some of the transformation is tied enormously to, strangely enough, protecting your own best interests and ensuring that you can meet your highest possible potential. Sorry, I'm squinting. It's really bright. So as I said, it's nice because you can see my face, but I'm squinting because of the light. It's a particularly warm day here in Southern California. When it comes to the things that are being tested, often it is things that we feel are conventionally things that should be working on our behalf and for our benefit, but are not. When a full moon happens, the sun and the moon oppose each other, which is why the moon to us is fully lit, with the earth in between. And when we have a lunar eclipse, it's the shadow of the earth that falls on the moon. This time around, we have the sun and Venus opposing the moon, Saturn, and Pluto at the eclipse points. Venus is a pattern planet of relationships and relating and harmony in relationships and money and creative activities, leisure activities, a sense of abundance. When we have a lunation, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, not only does that lunation or an eclipse stand for something important in and of itself, it also illuminates, captures other important planetary activities that are happening at that time. And the two planetary activities that are happening at this time, at the time of the full moon lunar eclipse tomorrow, are Venus's opposition to Saturn. As I said, the sun and Venus are together in Cancer. Saturn, the moon, and Pluto, or rather Saturn, Pluto, and the moon are opposited in Capricorn. As a result, we have the full moon, but we have these planets involved in the mix as well. Tomorrow, the Venus-Saturn opposition is exact, and currently Mercury is retrograde in Leo, but on the 19th it will move back into Cancer, one of the signs in which the eclipses are happening. Saturn tests everything it touches, and tests it from the perspective of whether or not it will help us achieve our fullest potential and whether it is for our benefit, good for us or not good for us. It does so in the spirit of a strict teacher or a taskmaster. And we don't always like or enjoy this testing process, because often we are either in denial of, or the actual abuse in question, for lack of a different word, whether we are abusing ourselves or other people or situations are abusing us, are not really obvious to us. And Saturn comes along and really tests everything that it touches. And relationships, and strangely enough, money. Perhaps no other lunation, no other full moon to me in recent history that I can think of most asks you to question and look at the role that your relationships have to do with your abundance and your money. And the moment you start to look at it, the connection seems so obvious. Firstly, in professional terms, what are my relationships? How strong are they? How present are they? Am I perceived as adding value? How Venusian and relatively smooth am I and harmonious am I when it comes to my relationships? Can I choose to do so in an authentic manner? Do I sometimes do it in a backhanded, in a Venusian manner, or in a passive manner? What is the link between my relationships and money? With Saturn in question, part of it is a question of where's your money coming from? Is it coming from places that are good for you? And is it coming from relationships that are good for you? So Venus is certainly being tested by Saturn, relationships and money, and to some extent, when it comes to creative endeavors and creative professions and leisure activities, this may act more it may act more as a teacher in helping you become better at something. But it's really, to me, it's the relationships and abundance link that is really being tested. Who are you shaking hands with? And you know, in the tarot, Capricorn as a sign is associated with the devil card. And Capricorn is not the sign of the devil. There is a link between the sign of Capricorn where the full moon is occurring and the prominence we give to social and professional standing and monetary success. Who is considered successful? Someone with a big house, someone with a great career, someone who is at the top of their field, someone who has a fancy title, someone who is conventionally successful. And Capricorn is a sign of conventional success. Money, foundations, properties, titles, climbing to the top of the ladder. If you're born on this planet and you have to lead a material existence, I am going to succeed. And there's nothing, I don't know that there's anything wrong in that per se. There's just, the question becomes, when is it a healthy expression of meeting one's potential? And when does it step into some sort of a handshake with the devil? And with Venus opposing Saturn, our boundaries, our relationships, and our relationship with money and where it is coming from. What are we tying ourselves to? Who are we tied to? Who is trying to tie themselves to us? All of that sort of comes into question. Where do you get your money from? And who are you in bed with? As I said, this could be money, or this could be relationships, or it could be some sort of interesting combination of the two. So far, what we've covered in this video is we have a full moon, lunar eclipse. Temporarily and temporarily, we will experience an intensity in the emotional dam breaking, and some people will get their offers, and some people will be pushed into the limelight, and things will be heightened for the next 72 hours, but certainly for the next 24 hours, and I would expect for the last 24 to 48 hours. Revelation, things becoming a little bit clearer. I've also mentioned that this full moon lunar eclipse is connected to the January 5th solar eclipse in Capricorn. These are eclipses of release. Let me expand on that to say that what needs to be released is sometimes not something physical or a relationship or a property or a thing, as much as it can be an attachment to something, or it can be an attachment to how we think other people and things and relationships should be. And once we give up that attachment, what does it make room for? And how are we freed? What is difficult, and what I mentioned when it came to the eclipses of release and the 6-month cycle from January the 5th to July the 16th, is that it is very, very hard for us to cut the cord and to let things go that have served us, that have outworn their purpose. But we, of course, our identity is so tied up to those things that it's very, very hard to kind of release the pole we're holding on to when the boat is trying to go in the direction of Cancer. The third thing that I mentioned so far is that there are two planetary aspects or occurrences that are occurring right now that this full moon lunar eclipse is exaggerating or capturing or taking a snapshot of. One is the opposition between Venus and Saturn, which I've talked about, testing relationships, testing money, testing creative activities. And then there's the fact that Mercury is currently retrograde, the planet of transactions and communication and details, attention to details, and finalizing things and getting things done. Communication, writing, contracts, getting people to put pen to paper. I also mentioned in previous videos, and I'm being very I hope I'm not putting people to sleep. I'm being very deliberate and very careful in the language that I'm using. So there's a certain amount of pausing in this video that I'm sure will drive some certain people crazy. I've also mentioned in previous videos, and I've done so relatively gently because I don't want to contribute to eclipse mania, oh, the sky is falling. But I think in my last video I did mention, and I will stick to it, to say that July, you know, after the new moon solar eclipse on July the 2nd, we all survived. But it took about a week for the astrology to become intense again. And the astrology is intense and has been for the past week. There's no question about it in my mind. And will continue to be so till about July the 22nd. But the energies won't really start to clear till the middle of August, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Until then, there are a lot of astrological events occurring that I suspect we will see mirrored in our lives in relatively challenging ways. The Venus-Saturn opposition at the time of this full moon lunar eclipse is one of them. On the 19th, Mercury comes back into Cancer, where we had the July 2nd solar eclipse. And we will be revisiting and communicating. We already are, because Mercury is very, very close to entering, I mean, the 19th is not that far away. Very, very close to entering Cancer anyway. And when a planet, I find, is about 5 degrees away from the sign it's going into, that sign in that part of a chart is already seeing the activity. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're already thinking about and reflecting on and communicating about and going back over, re-looking at things that have been causing us a certain amount, have been taking a certain amount of attention, or have been brewing since about May the 15th of this year. We're going to go back and re-look at them. That's January the 19th. On January the 19th, I believe Venus opposes Pluto, because Saturn is here, Pluto's here. Venus is opposing Saturn by tomorrow, and then Venus is going to move forward and it's going to oppose Pluto. That'll be another day. The planet of relationships and money opposes the planet of inevitable death and transformation. So whatever is being tested right now over the next week may burn to the ground. And death is a necessary process. And I'm not talking about mortality of physical death, the death of anything. Things have to end, things have to die, things have to be burned to the ground. And then on July the 22nd, the Sun moves into Leo, and the 27th, Venus moves into Leo, and we're like starting to clear our energy a certain amount. On the 31st of July, Mercury starts to go direct. And on the 31st of July, we have the new moon in Leo. We already have Mars in Leo. So one of the challenges of this particular full moon lunar eclipse is that energies are brewing in areas that are distracting to us, because we want to be looking forward and we want to be focused on wherever it is that Leo is in our chart. And some of that activity is happening, but we don't have enough planetary support to focus on what we want to focus on. We're being asked to deal with things from the past. We're being asked to shed an old skin. For some people, the process of shedding this old skin could be exciting in terms of what it promises. For other people, shedding this old skin is painful, because it comes with a recognition and a growing and an awareness that may not be pleasant, an enlightenment that may not be pleasant, but may well be necessary, and may be setting the stage for whatever it is that one needs to move into and move forward into. July the 21st, the Sun and Mercury also meet up the day before the Sun moves into Leo and Cancer, and that starts a new Mercury cycle. It's the subject of my next video. I've been talking about this video for a while. I will have to do it now. With Mercury retrograde at the time of this full moon, there are a few warnings that I have. First and foremost, the biggest benefit of Mercury retrograde is the ability to go back over things and look them over and find things. Everything is not settled. The custard is not set. The flan is not set. The pudding is not set. You may think it is being set. If anything is signed or decided or completed, for the most part, between now or between July the 7th and July the 31st, it will likely be regretted. It will likely need to be opened up again. It will likely need to be redone. After Mercury goes direct on July the 31st, and especially as you go into August and September, So be careful of being too eager to put pen to paper. Be careful of using this time to close things out. In fact, use this time to be open and to go back over things and really make sure that everything is in its place and all the details are done and everything is done and everything is completed or everything is concluded. Or if you have unfinished business and there are things that you wanted to do and take care of and get done, especially if they have to do with relationships or money or protecting boundaries, Mercury retrograde could be a great time to go over those and try and get that kind of activity done so that by the time handshakes need to happen in the middle of August, end of the first week of August, or into September, some of the work that needed to be done, some of the handshakes that needed, some of the conclusions, some of the details that need to be ironed out are being ironed out during this period. Looking over projects, looking over communications, looking over contracts, looking over details, going over things is not a bad thing right now. It is a great way to use this energy. Going over things or not going over things, but rushing to get things completed is a terrible way to use this time. And I am warning you that if you rush to get things completed in place out of whatever, it is very possible or very likely that by the time August the 5th or 10th comes around, you're going to be like, oh, crap, I missed something. Or I did not give this time to settle. Everything was not yet clear. Everything was not yet baked. So that is one warning. The other thing is that with this full moon in place, especially when it comes to communications about relationship and money, texts and emails and phone calls and communications may not be clear. There may be a kind of a Mercury retrograde moment or moments that are happening on many fronts, especially those that are reaching kind of full moony, explosive blow-ups. You know, two people are having a conversation and both of them are looking at each other like they're growing horns in the middle of their heads or something. You know, it's just like, what is going on? And an inability to connect, much like typical Mercury retrograde customer service phone calls, where it's like, oh, I need a spanner or I need a spade. And you're talking to someone and they're like, no, you need a hammer. And it's just like, what are we doing? Why can't you just send me what I'm looking? And it's just, it takes a surreal quality. Communications take on a very bizarre quality. Our ability to process information in a forward-thinking and a forward-looking manner, that's not what Mercury is asking us to do right now. So keep in mind that as we look at tomorrow's full moon lunar eclipse and what it is that it is bringing to light and where it is that it is leading us, it is an eclipse of release. Reflect on what it is that needs to be released. Is it something physical? Is it your attachment to something? Is it your attachment to how things should be and how people should be? And as a result of which, are you saying goodbye to something that will lead you to something exciting or interesting? It will no matter what. And is that how you're feeling? Or are you feeling like you're having an awfully difficult time letting go because it is disillusioning, and therefore enlightening. But whatever it is that is disillusioning or enlightening has a really painful and challenging quality to it. Pay attention to what is being illuminated in a heightened and an emotional way, whether it is positive or negative. Keep in mind that relationships and money and the relationships that we have with relationships related to money are being tested from the perspective of what is really good for us, what are we attached to, who are we shaking hands with, who are we in bed with, metaphorically speaking, maybe even really speaking. And that this analysis of relationships and money and to some extent creative activities will go through a greater intensification. It's as if things are being tested and revealed in these days, and in about 4 or 5 days' time, some of them may go through kind of a death and transformation moment as we lead towards and as we get towards the 21st of this month. And then, as I said, Mercury is retrograde. The best possible use of this time is to roll up your sleeves and deal with previous activities, even though everything in your soul is driving you to pay attention to wherever Leo is in your chart, but you're not finding the time to do so because the eclipses are demanding too much energy. You've got Saturn and Pluto and the Moon and the Sun and Venus and soon Mercury in the eclipse side, and you have Mars and Leo going, I want to focus on Leo stuff. And it's hard to know where to put your priorities. And where 6 planets are is what's going to win out. So dealing with past issues, trying to tie up loose ends, really paying attention to details, really listening, really reviewing, really looking at things with a fine-tooth comb, really understanding, and be warned that putting pen to paper right now, I know it's a full moon, and that can be one driving factor. You may not know it, but a full moon may be driving you to complete something. But I'm warning you, whatever you think is being completed around the 16th is not going to be complete. You're going to regret it. Things are going to be missed. Details are going to be missed. The I's are not going to, chances are may not be completely dotted. The T's may not be crossed. You have till the 31st. Frankly, you have till about August the 5th to continue this dotting the I's, crossing the T's process. The 16th of July is not a time to say this is done. Focus on getting done after August the 5th. Focus on getting done after August 5th. Focus on getting done after August the 15th. Wait for the planets to start their parade into Virgo. That's when things will become clearer. Right now, we're just being churned. But the intensity of the aspects that I have listed and talked about in my last video and touched on now will continue for another week or so. And then after the 22nd, we will finally start to get a certain amount of relief and forward movement. It's still not done till about the middle of August, though. Okay. I hope you found this useful. I'm sorry it was somewhat somnambulistic, talking as if I was sleepwalking, but I was trying to piece everything together. Feel free to share this video, like it, comment on it if you found it interesting, useful. My email address is in the subject or the description area on YouTube. You're welcome to contact me if you want a reading or if you want to consult with me. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to find it again, and click on the bell icon in order to be notified when I do new videos. And I will be back in touch soon. I will be back in touch soon to talk about something I have not talked about in these videos before, the Mercury cycle, which will begin on the 21st of July in the sign of Cancer, where the new moon eclipse happened on July the 2nd. And it is that July the 2nd eclipse that is now going to hold, because the July 2nd eclipse, new moon solar eclipse, started a 6-month cycle that ends on January the 10th of next year. So tomorrow's full moon bookends the time period from January the 5th of this year to July the 16th, and July the 2nd of this year, about a couple of weeks ago, the new moon solar eclipse started a period that will take us to January the 10th of next year, 2020. Okay. Hang in there for another week. Hang in there till the middle of August. We're in the middle of labor pains. Do not lose sight of details. Do not lose sight of having to go over things and pay attention to things. And taking care of things that have been on your to-do list and actions that need to be taken in order to, that could be related to cleaning up things related to money or relationships. Try to figure out what it is that is asking to be released. It should be pretty obvious by now, at least the area of your life where something needs to be released must be pretty obvious for now. For some people this might be exciting, for some people this is challenging, but try to see, is it something physical that needs to be released, or your attachment to something or how people should be? Know that you will have another go at all of this starting this Christmas of this year and into early July of next year. And try to be productive and peaceful for the next 48 and 72 hours. I will be back in touch soon. Thank you.